Amina had just finished her degree in Dar es Salaam and was excited about the future. She had landed a new job abroad and spent her days dreaming of her first apartment, her first paycheck, her freedom. So when her parents invited her to what they called a special family dinner, she dressed with a smile, thinking it was to celebrate her achievement. But when she walked into the dining room, the air shifted. On the table lay a thick stack of papers, the title on top screaming at her, Mortgage Agreement, $370,000. Her name was printed in bold letters. Her heart skipped. Her father slid the pen toward her as if it were nothing. "Sign," he said, steady and cold. Her mother leaned closer and whispered, "It's your duty, Amina. You owe this to us." The food on the table sat untouched, the room silent except for the sound of her own heartbeat. She looked around and saw every pair of eyes fixed on her, her brother, her aunt, her cousins, each waiting for her to surrender. Amina's throat tightened. This was no celebration. It was a trap. Her younger brother broke the silence, his voice sharp, "If you don't sign, we lose everything. The house, the land, even the cars." Her mother's voice cracked as fake tears rolled down. "We sacrificed everything for your education," she cried. The guilt, the pressure, the stares pressed against her chest like heavy stones. Amina sat frozen, realizing in that moment that love had turned into a weapon. Amina sat frozen in her chair, staring at the papers. Her hands trembled under the table, hidden in her lap. Before she could even breathe, her younger brother Musa leaned forward, his eyes sharp with anger. "If you don't sign, we'll lose everything," he said. "The house, the land, even the cars. Do you want to see us on the street because of your selfishness?" His words cut deep, but Amina could see the satisfaction on his face. It was as if he had been waiting for this moment to shame her. Her mother let out a shaky sob, pressing a handkerchief to her eyes. But Amina knew her mother well, these were not real tears. They were weapons. "We gave up everything for you," she cried. "Your father worked night and day, I sold my jewelry, I sacrificed my life just so you could go to school. And now you can't even do this one thing for us. Are you really that ungrateful?" The relatives around the table nodded in agreement, each one throwing their own poison into the air. One aunt muttered, "Education makes daughters proud. They forget where they come from." An uncle sighed loudly, shaking his head as if Amina had already brought shame on the family. Another cousin leaned back in his chair and whispered just loud enough for her to hear, "She thinks she's better than us now." Every word was another chain wrapping tighter around her chest. Amina could feel her heart pounding like a drum, her breath trapped inside her lungs. She looked at her father, hoping for at least a flicker of kindness, but his eyes were cold, locked on her like a predator waiting for prey. His hand tapped the table near the pen, slow and heavy, reminding her that her silence was only making things worse. Amina wanted to scream. She wanted to tell them that love was not supposed to feel like this, that love should never come with a price tag of $370,000. But her throat was dry, and the words would not come. Instead, she clenched her jaw so tightly she thought her teeth might break. Her mother reached across the table and touched her arm, her voice soft but sharp, each word dripping with guilt. "You are our hope, Amina. Without you, we are finished. Is this how you repay us? After all we did for you? After all the nights we went hungry so you could eat? After all the times we cried for you? And now you sit there, ready to watch us fall." The room felt smaller, the walls pushing closer, the air heavier. Everyone waited for her to break. Everyone wanted her to pick up that pen and give away her freedom. Her chest burned with anger and sadness all at once, her mind screaming, "How could the people who raised me turn into my captors? How could love feel like a noose tightening around my neck?" Amina stared down at the thick pile of papers. Her eyes moved slowly over the black letters, but her mind refused to accept them. Every line was a trap. Every clause was another heavy chain waiting to lock around her ankles. She could almost see her life being stolen away, 10, 20, maybe 30 years of paying off a debt that was never hers. Her palms grew damp. Her fingers trembled under the table. It felt like her whole body was shaking, but she sat still, refusing to let them see her break. Her father's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Sign the papers," he said again, this time louder, his hand slamming down on the wooden table. The glasses rattled, the spoons jumped, and everyone flinched, everyone except Amina. She lifted her eyes slowly, meeting his furious stare. For a moment, the room was so quiet that even the sound of her heartbeat felt like thunder in her ears. Finally, she spoke, her voice steady but firm. "I will not sign." The room erupted. Her aunt gasped and covered her mouth. Musa cursed under his breath, calling her ungrateful. Her mother's tears returned, heavier than before, as she cried out, "How could you do this to us, Amina? After everything we've done for you." But it was her father who rose to his feet, towering over her, his face red with rage. He pointed at her with a trembling hand and shouted, "You're nothing without us. Do you hear me? Nothing. You will regret this for the rest of your life." The words boomed in the small dining room, bouncing off the walls, filling every corner with venom. Amina sat frozen, her lips pressed tightly together. Inside, though, something strange was happening. Beneath the fear and the pressure, a quiet spark flickered. She bit her lip hard, trying to hide it, but a smirk was already forming. Because what no one in that room knew, not her father with his threats, not her mother with her tears, not Musa with his curses, not even the whispering relatives. They didn't know that Amina had already made her choice weeks ago. They didn't know that her suitcase was already packed and hidden under her bed. They didn't know that her passport was tucked safely in her purse, and her plane ticket was waiting, ready to carry her far away. So while they screamed, while they cursed, while they tried to break her spirit with their words, Amina only sat there, her silence thicker than their noise. Let them think they had trapped her. Let them believe she was cornered. They had no idea that the storm was already moving, and it wasn't her who was about to be destroyed. She straightened in her chair, her trembling gone now, her smirk hidden but alive. The chains they tried to wrap around her were already falling apart. They thought they owned her. But by the time they realized the truth, she would be long gone. Weeks before that stormy dinner, Amina had already seen the danger coming. She had grown up watching how her family worked, how love was often mixed with control, how sacrifices were later turned into chains. So when she got the job offer from a top architecture firm in Johannesburg, she knew it was not just a career opportunity, it was her way out. She accepted the contract quietly, without a word to anyone, and poured all her energy into preparing for the life ahead. The day her first paycheck landed in her account, she didn't celebrate with friends or buy herself anything new. Instead, she went online, her hands shaking with both fear and excitement, and bought a one-way ticket. A single step that meant freedom. That ticket became her secret lifeline, the proof that she would not be trapped. She slipped the folded ticket into her purse, tucked between receipts and old bus passes, where no one would ever think to look. Every day she carried it with her, close to her chest, like a shield against the storm she knew was coming. When her parents began to corner her with demands, when relatives started hinting about her responsibility to the family, Amina would press her hand gently against her bag, feeling the paper inside, reminding herself that she was not theirs to own. So when the dinner turned into a courtroom, when voices rose and threats flew across the table, Amina stayed calm. Her silence was not weakness. Her lowered eyes were not surrender. While her father raged and her mother cried, while Musa called her selfish and the relatives whispered about her pride, Amina sat still, breathing slowly, holding her secret close. They mistook her quietness for hesitation. They thought their words were breaking her. But inside, she was whispering to herself over and over, like a prayer, like a promise, "By the time you realize, I'll be gone." Her calmness only made them angrier. Her father slammed the table again, demanding obedience. Her mother clutched her chest as though betrayed by her own daughter. But Amina's heart was no longer in that room. In her mind she was already walking through the airport gates, suitcase rolling behind her, ticket in hand, passport ready. She could already see the bright city lights of Johannesburg, the skyline where her new office waited, the streets where no one would know her name or her past. She let them shout. She let them throw their guilt and their anger at her. Because every word only proved what she had known all along. They didn't want her freedom, they only wanted her chains. And she refused to give them that satisfaction. Her escape was ready, her path already drawn. By the time they discovered the truth, she would be high in the sky, flying far away, leaving behind the trap they had tried so hard to close around her. Her father's patience snapped like dry wood. He grabbed the pen from the table and shoved it hard into Amina's hand, his eyes burning with fury. The metal tip pressed against her skin as if it were a weapon. The room was silent, everyone waiting for her to finally give in. Her mother's tear-stained face leaned closer, whispering, "Just sign, Amina, don't shame us." Musa leaned back in his chair, a cruel smirk on his lips, certain she was about to surrender. But Amina's fingers slowly uncurled, and the pen slid from her hand, clattering against the table. The sound echoed through the dining room, sharp and final. She lifted her chin, her voice clear and steady, slicing through the tension. "I will not be signing my life away." For a moment, the room froze. Her aunt gasped so loudly it almost sounded like a scream. A cousin muttered, "Ya Allah," under his breath. Musa cursed, shaking his head violently, calling her ungrateful, heartless. Her mother covered her mouth as if the words were knives cutting her from the inside. But it was her father who moved first. He rose slowly, his chair scraping the floor, his fists clenched so tight his knuckles turned white. His face glowed red with anger, and when he spoke, his voice shook the walls. "You dare defy me? After everything? You're nothing without us. Nothing." The air was thick, charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. The relatives shifted nervously in their seats, unsure if they should interfere, their eyes darting between father and daughter. Amina could feel her heart pounding, but her fear was gone. Instead, a strange calmness spread through her body, as if her spirit had finally broken free from the cage they tried to keep her in. Before her father could unleash his rage fully, before the chaos could swallow her whole, Amina stood. She pushed back her chair with a sharp scrape, the sound cutting across the room. Every eye turned to her, expecting her to cry, to beg, to explain herself. But she did none of that. She simply adjusted her dress, stood tall, and whispered with a coldness that silenced even the whispers around her, "Enjoy the house. I won't be here when it crumbles." Her words dropped like stones into still water, the ripples spreading across every face at the table. Her aunt's eyes widened in shock. Musa's smirk faltered for the first time. Her mother's hand froze mid-air, her lips parted but no sound came out. Even her father, towering with rage, blinked as if struck by something he couldn't control. Then Amina turned, her footsteps slow but certain, her back straight, her silence louder than any scream. The house that once felt like a prison was no longer her cage. With every step, she knew she was walking not just away from the table but from years of manipulation, from chains disguised as love. They wanted her obedience, but what she gave them instead was her refusal, her final explosion of truth. And nothing they could do would ever chain her again. That night, the house was quiet, but Amina's mind was loud. Every word from dinner replayed in her head like echoes she couldn't escape. The curses, the guilt, her father's threats, all of it sat heavy in her chest. Yet beneath that weight, something lighter was rising, freedom. While the rest of the family slept, Amina lay in bed with her eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. She knew this was it. If she didn't leave now, they would corner her again, and next time she might not have the strength to resist. Slowly, she slipped out of bed and pulled her suitcase from beneath it. It was small, just big enough to hold a few clothes, her passport, and the dreams she had been protecting in secret. She moved quietly, careful not to wake anyone. Every creak of the floor made her heart jump, but she kept going. Step by step, she dragged the suitcase across the hallway, past the doors of those who wanted to chain her life to theirs. She didn't look back. Outside, the night air hit her face like a blessing. She stood on the street, her chest rising and falling, the suitcase handle tight in her hand. The city was asleep, but Amina was wide awake, alive in a way she had never felt before. She pulled out her phone, dialed for a taxi, and within minutes headlights appeared, washing her in pale light. As she climbed inside, her hands shook with fear, but a smile tugged at her lips. She was leaving, not tomorrow, not someday, but now. The ride to the airport felt unreal. The streets she had walked all her life blurred past the window, fading behind her. She pressed her forehead to the glass and whispered to herself, "This is the last time." The driver glanced at her in the mirror, but she didn't explain. Some things didn't need words. At the airport, she walked quickly, clutching her ticket, her passport safe in her purse. Each step felt like breaking free from another invisible chain. By the time she boarded the plane, her legs were trembling, not from fear, but from relief. She sank into her seat, staring at the dark runway outside, waiting for the moment she had been dreaming of. When the engines roared and the plane began to lift, Amina closed her eyes. Her heart raced, but not from panic. This time it was joy, fierce and wild. She felt the pull of gravity loosen, felt the city fall away beneath her, and with it the lies, the guilt, the $370,000 trap that had never belonged to her. One by one, the invisible chains snapped, leaving her lighter than she had ever been. As the plane pierced the clouds, Amina opened her eyes and smiled. She wasn't running anymore. She was flying, toward her future, toward freedom, toward a life that was finally her own. Months passed, and Amina's life in Johannesburg began to bloom like a flower finally given sunlight. She moved into a small but bright apartment, where the walls echoed with her laughter instead of shouting. Every morning she walked to her new office, her steps light, her heart steady. At the architecture firm, she poured her energy into designs that won praise from her bosses. Her first paycheck felt like a victory, but it wasn't just about the money, it was proof that she could stand on her own, without the chains her family had tried to lock around her. On weekends, she explored the city, tasting new foods, meeting new friends, and watching the skyline at night, knowing she had built this life with her own courage. Back in Dar es Salaam, however, things were not as bright. The house that once held so much pride was now filled with whispers and worry. The bank started calling, their voices cold and relentless, demanding payment. Letters stamped in red piled up on the table where they had once placed the mortgage papers in front of Amina. One by one, the reminders grew harsher, default notices, warnings, final demands. Her father, once so confident, paced the house with lines deepening on his face. Her mother sat silently with her head in her hands, her tears no longer fake but real this time. The relatives who had once pointed fingers at Amina now turned their whispers toward her parents. They forced too much, one said behind closed doors. She was wise to leave, another added. The same cousins who mocked her for being proud now lowered their voices when they spoke of her, afraid to be associated with a crumbling empire. The respect her family had demanded was slipping away, brick by brick, as the truth spread through the neighborhood. At night, her parents lay awake, realizing too late that their plan had backfired. They had believed Amina would never dare to walk away, that guilt and duty would always chain her back to them. But now the weight of the mortgage was theirs alone to carry. The house they once tried to protect with her signature was now the very thing drowning them. And while they suffered, Amina thrived. She decorated her apartment with plants and paintings, each corner filled with life. She woke up to the sound of her alarm, not her father's demands. She went to sleep with peace in her heart, not fear in her chest. Her laughter filled her space, and her silence was now a choice, not a punishment. The news traveled fast, carried on the same tongues that once cursed her. People said, Amina made the right choice. They admired her bravery from afar. And though her parents tried to hide their shame, the truth could not be covered. The empire they built on control was falling, and the daughter they thought they owned had walked away forever. The phone rang late one evening as Amina sat in her office, finishing up a project. The city skyline glowed through the glass windows, the lights of Johannesburg stretching endlessly before her. She almost ignored the call, but when she saw the name flashing on the screen, her heart skipped. It was her mother. For a moment, Amina just stared at it, remembering all the tears, the shouting, the guilt. Finally, she answered. Her mother's voice came through shaky and desperate. Amina, please, you must come back. We're drowning. The bank is taking everything. We can't do this without you. There was no anger this time, no shouting, only fear. The woman who had once commanded her with guilt now sounded small, begging. Amina listened quietly, her eyes fixed on the tall buildings outside, the life she had built with her own hands. Her mother kept talking, her voice breaking, you are our only hope. If you don't help, we will lose it all. But Amina felt no guilt now. She had carried those chains long enough. Her voice came out calm, steady, sharper than any shout. You cornered me with papers, she said slowly, but I cornered you with freedom. I owe you nothing. The line went silent. She could almost feel the shock on the other end, the silence of parents who never thought their daughter would speak to them this way. For years they had believed they controlled her. For years they thought guilt was stronger than her will. But that night, they heard the truth. Amina didn't wait for a reply. She ended the call, set her phone down, and leaned back in her chair. For the first time, she felt no fear of what they would say or do. The girl they thought they owned was gone. In her place stood a woman who would never be owned again.